Hey, welcome to the Digital Frontier, Hyperscale Data Center and Resource Extraction in Indigenous North America. I am Winona Storms, and I created this presentation as a part of my contemporary issues in American Indian society. My professor is Dr. Chantal Norgard, and I attend the University of Wisconsin-Superior. I am also the founder of the Public Inquiry Project and the director of Storm Syndicate. As well as all that, I am on the leadership team for No Data Center DeForest, and I work in partnership with Great Lakes Neighbors United. So the central question that we're going to be focusing on today is, are data centers on or near native lands a path to sovereignty, or are they a new form of extraction? And when we talk about hyperscale AI infrastructure, so we're talking about all of it, right? We're talking about from minerals in the ground to power and water on tribal lands to the equipment within and the build out of actual data centers. We will be discussing the legal tools, organizing, and indigenous-led alternatives. And as you listen, I ask that you consider the parallels between data center development and earlier extractive industries. So I wanted to also do a quick disclaimer and personal statement. The views and opinions expressed today are explicitly my own. I am not acting as an official spokesperson of UW Superior, Dr. Norgard, NDCD, or GLNU. This was a semester-long project, and it really pulled a lot of my own passion and dedication to issues concerning the preservation of tribal sovereignty, honoring the legacy and the promises made, requiring accountability and transparency regarding corporate greed, capitalism, and the government agencies that serve those interests. In this project, my research examines the intersection of big data, big tech, big energy, and as they relate to the relate to capitalist progress and what that exactly means for Indigenous people, tribal lands, and the general American public. So, why do AI data centers matter now? And so first, I just wanted to talk and touch base about electricity measurements. We talk a lot about electricity in this presentation, and if you're anything like me, you knew exactly zero about what it all meant. So the base unit is a watt, so 1 watt. Think about your light bulbs, right? Um, and then we have 1 kilowatt is 1,000 watts. This would be your home central AC unit. Requires a draw of 3 to 5 kilowatts. Um, and then we have megawatts. 1 megawatt equals 1 million watts, and it is used when measuring things for electricity for large commercial buildings, factories, small power plants, and towns. 1 gigawatt is 1 billion watts. So this is what is used for large cities, major power plants, and even entire national grids. And then finally, we have terawatts, which is 1 trillion watts. Obviously, that's huge, and I mean that is the type of um, measurement we would do for large countries like the United States. In Wisconsin, in 2024, we used 73 million megawatt hours per Wisconsin watch. And so 100 megawatts supports around 100,000 homes, which is somewhere around 250,000 people. Um, but it's also 100 megawatts is right around the average power needed by a single hyperscale data center. It's a lot. Um, so per the U.S. Geographical Survey in 2024, data center electricity load growth has grown 3 times since 2014 to 2024. Um, and then programs in their 2026 Measuring the Data Center Boom Facts and Statistics report stated that data center development um, will grow 3 times by 2030. And they also stated that an AI server rack in 2027 is expected to require 50 times more power than the server racks that power the traditional internet services. So think Internet Explorer and MSN Messenger. Back in the day, they're saying that that type of electricity draw for those servers is 50 times less than what we're going to be seeing next year for AI server racks. So Malakoff predicts that by 2028, the total US electricity used by data centers will account for 12% of use in the United States. Data center power needs will also drive 60% of the overall electrical loads and increase in the US through 2030. In the last 5 years, Deer and Water asserted in Cultural Survival that some communities near AI data centers have seen a 267% increase in their electricity costs. These costs are passed to the consumers, but it's just really important to note that this isn't money that the data center developers are paying. And in fact, we're seeing that they are making deals with the utility companies and then going to the Public Service Commission, like here in Wisconsin, to get those rate deals approved and to also pass on the additional costs to consumers. Programs also suggest in their document that by 2028, data center demand will be up to 130 gigawatts of power. So what you should take away from this is not just like about AI and large buildings. It's really this whole thing is about energy and infrastructure. But wait, there's more. This is not new. The current data center boom is connected to older extractive systems on or near Indigenous lands. So the Mining Act of 1872, it still governs hard rock mining that we're seeing today, and it provides the legal scaffolding for this resource extraction. And to give historical context, Deer and Water expands on this. Uranium was extracted from Nation. Oh my gosh, I can't talk. To give historical context for this, Deer and Water expands on this. Uranium was extracted from Navajo Nation lands from 1944 to 1986, with over 1,000 mines on Navajo land. Nuclear testing on Western Shoshone lands occurred from 1951 to 1992. This is about 65 miles north of Las Vegas. And the Wanapum displacement in 1943 for the creation of nuclear facilities. And all of this is still occurring as the nation remembers the Dakota Access Pipeline at Standing Rock is a modern and loud example of exploiting Indigenous lands. Um, and this isn't an isolated occurrence. These things are still happening every year. And every day, honestly, when you think about the extraction industry. And so we really need to be able to see that this is still happening. Yes, AI is a new technology, but it's being built on a familiar geography of Indigenous sacrifice. So, Mini-Wachoni, water is life, a Lakota phrase that has encompassed the Indigenous resistance movement. We need to recognize that it's not just a buzz phrase and it was not created to be a hashtag in a singular moment of time. In 2019, there was a Bioneers panel discussion that was moderated by Clayton Thomas Muller, with Colleen Sisk of the Wintu tribe, Carletta Talusi of the Havasupai tribe, and Carrie Cece Curley of the San Carlos Apache tribe. And so this happened in 2019, and they prescribed the Mini-Wachoni framework as being about identity, responsibility, and survival. It's tied to identity, obviously, like I said, ceremony, food systems, treaty use, and legacy building for future generations. Mini-Wachoni, it predates Standing Rock and it will outlast it. So when we're discussing hyperscale data center direct and indirect water usage, it is a continuation of Mini-Wachoni. Withdrawals on or near native lands and shared watersheds are exactly the reason for this resistance. When tribal communities say water is life, they are naming who they are. They are naming the cultural, legal, natural, and material boundaries that these infrastructure projects keep crossing. Jennifer Watson, who is a reporter who had covered the Standing Rock events from 2016 to 2017, wrote, "Never again, they vowed. Water is life, Minnie Wachoni. This is all we have left. Our river and the lands you didn't take last time. Sacrifice zones, and extraction. The term sacrifice zones originated during the Cold War era to describe land that was rendered uninhabitable by nuclear testing. A lot of this land was indigenous land. And then later it did evolve into being an environmental justice term applied by researchers like Dr. Robert Bullard in the 1990s to describe the hyperpolluted neighborhoods where local health had been sacrificed for industrial growth. And then Loki stated excuse me, Loki stated in 2023 that these zones cluster around Indigenous, Black, Brown, and rural communities that have less political and financial power to refuse development. Crystal Tubles, the executive director of Honor the Earth, argues that tech firms target these communities because they assume less organized resistance. So, from minerals to data centers, every data center has a mining footprint that falls on indigenous lands. The U.S. Geological Survey in 2025 listed the minerals that go into each part of a server, including things like aluminum and copper, gallium, germanium, indium, silicon, and more. Um, and per the U.S. Geological Survey in 2025, the federal government is currently pushing to make mineral extraction a domestic priority to reduce reliance on foreign imports, which really it fast tracks mining operations under critical minerals policy. And so when we have the data centers using the critical minerals, um, it all just becomes so wrapped up in each other. Mining creates data centers. During the Data Center Frontier Panel Roundtable in 2026, Thea Franco stated that data centers are an addition industry layered on top of existing extraction. It's not a replacement, it's not new, it is just another extraction industry to add on top of the existing framework. A typical AI data center hosts an average of over 5,000 servers, and each of those servers has a multitude of advanced GPU chips plus mini CPUs. These chips must be replaced every 3 to 5 years. The current reliance on a finite amount of extracted minerals is structurally unsustainable. Opposition to mining and data centers share root causes regarding who decides, who benefits, and who pays the cost. So, why are tribal lands targeted? McNeil, a reporter for Mother Jones, stated in 2026 that tribal lands are targeted for four different yet overlapping reasons: land at scale, sovereign status, regulatory gaps, and economic pressures. Developers use the sovereign status of sovereign nations to bypass state utility and environmental rules. Many tribes are approached before they've even had time to consider or develop dedicated utility codes, environmental reviews, and zoning for hyperscale industrial use. High poverty rates and tax incentives create pressure on tribal nations where new revenue feels hard to refuse. Targeting is structural and purposeful. It is not coincidental nor accidental. The targeting is not random. That's really important to understand. It's a structural pattern that needs to be named. It's existed since the Spanish Empire first landed on Turtle Island and then continued by British and European colonialism. So, what's being presented to tribes as opportunity, which is a repeated pattern, is really a proposal that relies on being built quickly with weak disclosure, so there will be little to no resistance to construct prior to the construction starting. Here's a case study of the Muskogee Creek Nation. A proposal called the Muskogee Tech Park Bill wanted to place a data center on Looped Square Ranch, which is roughly around 5,500 acres. And so their lands are located in Oklahoma and they span over 11 counties. The ranch is what supports their food sovereignty initiatives as well as education, hunting, gathering, etc. NDAs had blocked the public disclosure of water demands, energy demands, and even the developer's name. This is really becoming a standard of data center proposals across the nation, where residents don't learn the name of the developer until after the agreements have been signed. The National Council voted 4 to 11 against the bill after citizens organized town halls across the 11 counties that the reservation lands cover. Another case study, I forgot to cite the last one. The last one was also a McNeil article. This one is as well, the information in it. So the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe Reservation um, is around Pyramid Lake. Pyramid Lake is just outside of Reno, Nevada. A planned industrial park in Reno threatens this finite water supply. They intend to take withdrawal water from it in order for their cooling systems. The Tonawanda Seneca Nation faces a multi-billion-dollar data center project on their ceded lands. The forest where the proposed data center project will be built has treaty protected uses for the tribe, like hunting, fishing, traditional medicine gathering. So the water and energy impacts, this information came from Yáñez Barnuevo in 2025, as well as the Environmental and Energy Study Institute. So a single hyperscale data center can use up to 5 million gallons of water in just one day. And that's for direct cooling, direct use. Around 211 billion gallons of water are used annually to generate electricity for data center use. That was in 2023. The amount of data centers that have been built since then, proposed since then, are in the works since then, are exponential. A single chip fabrication plant uses approximately 10 million gallons of ultra pure water each day, which actually means that roughly 14 to 16 million gallons of water is being brought into the facility and then filtered multiple times in order to create the ultra pure water. Once water is processed for chip fabrication, or alternatively for mixing with chemical additives and closed loop cooling systems to prevent freezing, much of the water is now considered permanently contaminated and rendered non-potable. About 56% of US data center electricity still comes from fossil fuels. Grid delays and behind the meter deals. So in her 2026 article, McNeil, a reporter from Mother Jones, reported that power availability is the primary site selection driver. A hyperscale data center building is currently averaging around 100,000 square feet, but it is reported that that number is growing every day. Developers are frustrated with the public grid queues and government regulation agencies because they being the data center developers, require massive amounts of power. And they can only receive just a fraction of that amount at times after waiting in line. One example was provided by the Hanwha data centers in 2025, where the demand was 1,000 megawatt, but they were only able to receive 28 megawatts after a 3-year wait. This creates a build, let's see what happens, and then it didn't happen, it didn't work the way we planned, so let's build some more. Not sustainable. So this grid delay pushes developers towards behind the meter deals, where they can sidestep the public utility queue, which is one of the things that makes tribal land so appealing for that fast-tracked approval process. So why are they so desperate for land, power, and water? The slide's focused on the pressure that the center industry is under because it's imperative to understand that before talking about who pays the cost for that pressure. The build-out's shaped by grid scarcity, water stress, regulatory asymmetry, and a long history of sacrifice zone siting. U.S. data center electricity demand is projected to grow by about 460 terawatt hours by 2030, per the recent North American Electric Reliability Corporation alert that was just released last week, which stated that this demand is about 3 times our current consumption. And to put that into perspective, we have a government agency that is saying, hey, we are demanding more energy than what we can provide. And so something needs to change. Currently, they are not asking residents to limit electricity use. However, they have put forward their statement and then they're expecting the um, Federal Electric, I don't know if it's Reliability Corporation or not, and I should know that, but anyway, they expect a response from them about what they plan to do moving forward to get out of this level 3 critical alert. So new transmission builds move slow. They just do. And they're moving slower than the new data center builds and demand for electricity. The cooling systems draw substantial power year-round, and that piles onto these already overloaded power grids per Net Zero Insights in 2025. And as we already discussed, the water footprint of AI and its infrastructure adds additional pressures as well. And then the retrofits, replacements and repairs of current data center infrastructure. We really need to focus on these are non-standard and specific specialty builds. Any error can and will devastate the data center's entire system. And it's expensive. So, why is this something that we need to consider? The more pressure that the industry faces from the power queues, cooling lines, public scrutiny, the more attractive that sovereign and underprotected spaces appear to developers. So, the Department of Energy Office of Indian Energy frames data centers as an economic opportunity and offers tribes site evaluations and regulatory help. A report published by the Payne Institute for Public Policy, which included two Indigenous authors, asserted that with safeguards, tribal land bases, water rights, and sovereignty can support digital sovereignty. And this pitch leans on jobs, revenue, and broadband access as benefits. The catch, well documented as prior promises from other industries, have often failed to materialize. Digital sovereignty versus data colonialism. So, on the pro-development side, a presentation on data centers by the Calusa Indian Energy noted that tribally controlled water-light data centers can support genuine digital sovereignty if tribes set policy first. And on the critique side, cultural survival and honor the earth describe most current projects as being hyperscale facilities that are designed to serve outside platforms, where sovereignty is just exploited to bypass state regulators and compound resource harm. The Clean Water Act, Section 401, is one of the strongest tools that tribes have. Tribes with treatment as a state status can certify, condition, deny, or waive any federal permit that might discharge into their waters, and any conditions must be included in the federal permit. Sovereignty also covers zoning, utility codes, environmental review, and outright refusal. However, recent changes to the Clean Water Act, either enacted by executive order or currently being proposed, threaten tribal rights and treaties. Consultation is not consent. Um, Kay and Cohen in 2026 went over this. When sovereign status has not been granted, EPA regional offices certify on the tribe's behalf. They do offer federal consultation, but consultation is not consent. It means that the agencies will invite tribal leaders to a meeting and then move on. The final decision still sits with the federal government and not with the tribe who will be impacted by this. Many tribal governments have not yet built the utility codes or the environmental review capacity for industrial scale tech. They are not alone. This came out of the blue and it really surprised communities across our country. Um, None of us were ready for what was coming. The National Environmental Policy Act review is being narrowed federally as well at the same time that these tribes are being pressed to host more. And under-resourced tribes and frontline communities have to keep up with the entire process, often without the staff or the budget to match what the developers and the agencies on the other side have. The issue is not only whether tribes are consulted and can give meaningful input, but like if they have enforceable and actionable power, time, staffing, and information. Moratoriums and tribal policy action. So, moratoriums are motions to pause all development from a specific industry while more information is being processed and learned. On March 7th, the Seminole Nation of Oklahoma's Tribal Council voted 24 to 0 for a complete moratorium on hyperscale data centers and generative AI development, triggered by a startup that had arrived with an NDA and a letter of intent. The moratorium was able to be enacted prior to being locked into an NDA. The Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians have voted unanimously for an indefinite moratorium with strict parameters for lifting it. Both of these are framed in water and sovereignty language and not anti-tech language. That is so important. Um, this is not being anti-tech. Um, this is making sure that the framework for tech development is responsible and sustainable. The criminalization and repression. So, the Center for Constitutional Rights reports that Energy Transfer Partners filed a RICO type lawsuit against Crystal Tubles and others for protesting DAPL. RICO stands for Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. This was a federal law that was created and designed to prosecute the mafia. And it's now being used to target environmental protesters per Earth Rights International. These type of lawsuits are frequently categorized as SLAPP suits or strategic lawsuit against public participation. It's not only meant to drain activists' time and money, but also to silence public resistance. The case was dismissed with prejudice in 2019, meaning that Energy Transfer Partners are unable to file this type of a lawsuit against two bulls ever again. The federal government, though, is working towards labeling data centers as critical infrastructure, which is what DAPL is labeled as. Um, this is located on a U.S. Congress 2025 report, and this raises the legal stakes and risks for free speech and protest. Stacking new and additional criminal exposure to resistance efforts only increases the risk and violates protections of free speech and protest. The SPEED Act and NEPA. So, the SPEED Act stands for the Standardizing, Permitting, and Expediting Economic Development Act. The Bipartisan Policy Center describes it as federal legislation that rolls back environmental review under the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA. It also limits the review of impacts to a definition of reasonably close causal relationship, which considerably narrows the analysis of cumulative impacts. For projects that are tied to data centers, this means the combined environmental burden of the power plants, transmission lines, mines, and water permits effectively disappear from the legal record. So this is the death cycle of AI. I learned about this recently when I was attending a roundtable discussion, the data center frontier. And so this was termed by Crystal Tubles during that, who is the executive director for Honor the Earth. I created this graphic. She has a much better one on her website. It was just too large to put it on here and make it readable. Even I had a hard time getting this to be readable for you guys. Um, but Honor the Earth states that data centers are part of the death cycle of AI. The cycle runs from mineral extraction to energy build out to compute, surveillance, repression, and it just proves that extraction feeds extraction. We have to evaluate AI infrastructure as a whole system rather than isolated buildings located in a so-called no man's land, or as we know them, sacrifice zones. Thea Riofrancos stated that extraction is constant background. We are so used to it at this point, we only see it if we go looking for it. Um, the microchips in our phones, the lithium batteries we use in our TV remote. These are everyday uses of extracted minerals, and we're used to it. Vivek Bharathan said during that same roundtable that this is not NIMBY. Like, we're not operating in a not in my backyard. This is all part of a cruelty industry that links AI surveillance and warfare. And also, it's not that we don't want them in our backyard. We don't want them in anybody's backyard until these developers are able to operate in a responsible and sustainable manner, as I said earlier. AI infrastructure cannot be evaluated only as one small bit. It is a whole system. Indigenous-led alternatives. So during that same data center roundtable that happened. It was just last month. Walapinis were discussed. They're underground greenhouses that are able to provide food year-round, as well as micro hydropower. These are two projects that Don Moneyhan, a tribal elder out of the Little River Band of Ottawa Indians, and chief clergy of Queeway Indigenous Culture Church states that her projects are focused on the bottoming out of the system in order to create true independence. Smaller, tribally controlled compute sites have also been utilized for local data and water-light cooling that's been designed by native technologists. So these alternatives are not anti-data center or anti-infrastructure. This is tribal-built infrastructure where tribes get to set the scale and the rules. So Honor the Earth runs the Stop Data Colonialism campaign. And they also have a public data center tracker and a tribal government toolkit. Honestly, I have looked through this toolkit and I've sent it on to multiple people. It is amazing for anybody to use. They have so much information there for you. Highly recommend checking it out. Um, their data center tracker relies entirely on submissions from frontline communities to map where new proposals and operating data centers are. Um, this is not just for tribal lands. This is across the entire United States. If you know of a data center proposal and it's not on their tracker, please submit letting them know where it is and what you know about it. There are additional grassroots organizations across the country. It is an amazing movement to see. There's the No Desert Data Center Coalition in Tucson, the Coalition to Protect the Decatur County Against AI Data Center in Indiana. There's hundreds and hundreds of these, including, the two that I am a part of, which is No Data Center DeForest and Great Lakes Neighbors United. Honor the Earth asks allies to support frontline communities, file your open records requests, follow the campaigns, really just keep paying attention is what it comes down to. Be involved, be engaged, keep paying attention. In closing, we need to see the bigger picture. AI hyperscale data centers are just another addition to the extraction industry, becoming part of the complete and interconnected system. Mining, power generation, water usage, legal loopholes, AI compute, surveillance, all of this add up to the same extractive cycle that we have already seen. Tubals contends that showing these connections is how we can get communities to understand what exactly is at stake. Data centers on or near native lands are decisions that have been made by specific actors under specific laws, and these types of decisions and policies can be unmade. Sovereignty includes the right to refuse, set conditions, and define land use. Water and treaty protected uses are the consistent boundary line across all of these cases. And so the final question that remains here is what legal, material, and political conditions are needed for an Indigenous voice saying no to hold power in the United States as it stands today? Thank you so much. I really hope you guys gained some information and learned something from all this. Um, my I need to attach my contact information to all this. Please reach out if you have any questions or if you want to get involved. Thank you so much. Have a great day.